Welcome to VSOW, where we take a deep, comprehensive look at the source material behind the films, concepts, and ideas that shape our culture. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the initially monochromatic but soon-to-be vibrant world of the 1998 fantasy comedy drama Pleasantville.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film to unpack. Our mission for this deep dive is really to get into the richness of it because it's the cinematic allegory that works on, well, quite a few levels, personal, political, even technical. We want to give you that shortcut to being, properly informed on its themes, things like repression, enlightenment. We'll look at how critics saw it and definitely explore those pretty revolutionary production techniques, the ones that let the director, Gary Ross, bring that whole black and white to color metaphor to life so effectively.
And it's interesting, the journey of the film itself starts with a bit of a paradox, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Something fundamental to its legacy. Our sources show that Pleasantville, when it came out, it hit a commercial snag. It had a pretty hefty budget, around $60 million.
Yeah, about that, $60 million. Which is a lot for 98, especially for this kind of concept.
Exactly. And yet it only pulled in about, $49.8 million at the box office? So
yeah.
Initially you'd have to call it a commercial failure.
You would. But like you said, that's only half the picture. Because while it didn't make its money back right away, the critics, they absolutely loved it. They picked up on its intelligence, its originality. I mean, it's got an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really strong. And over time, it's absolutely become this cult classic.
Why do you think that is? What gives it that staying power?
I think it's because it manages to be this really provocative, surprisingly sharp anti-nostalgia parable. But it's wrapped up in something familiar, this high concept kind of time travel comedy setup. It doesn't just poke fun at the 50s, it critiques the idea of the 50s that television sold us, that idealized, perfect version.
Okay, so let's dig into that setup. The core premise really hinges on this conflict, or maybe contrast, between two teenagers from 1998, twin siblings, David and Jennifer.
Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon, yeah. And they really are set up as these ultimate late 90s cultural opposites. That contrast is just essential to the whole thing.
How so?
Well, David, he's the introverted one, intellectual, maybe a bit nerdy, and he's completely obsessed with this old black and white sitcom, Pleasantville. He finds comfort in how predictable it is, how morally simple everything seems.
Right, it's his escape.
Totally. It's his supposed utopia away from all the messiness of the real world of the 90s. Jennifer, though, she couldn't be more different. She's all about her social status, dating, popularity, maybe a bit of rebellion. The show means nothing to her.
And it's their fight over the TV, over watching Pleasantville, that kicks everything off.
Exactly. They're fighting over the remote, and then suddenly this mysterious TV repairman shows up, played by Don Knotts, which is just perfect casting. His last actual on-screen film role, too.
And he's somehow impressed by David.
Yeah. He quizzes David at the show, and David knows everything, every plot point, every character nuance. It's encyclopedic. And this impresses the repairman.
That knowledge, David, knowing the script perfectly, that feels important.
Oh, it's crucial. Because the repairman gives them this really strange remote control. It almost seems alive. And zap. It transports them right into the black and white world of the show.
They become characters in the show.
Instantly. They're Bud and Mary Sue Parker, the kids in the sitcom family. Their 1998 identities are just gone.
Yeah.
And they're forced into these rigid, predefined roles within this TV universe.
So David thinks he's landed in paradise,
Yeah.
right? But as we look closer, this perfection is, it's pre-engineered and maybe suffocating.
Yeah.
You mentioned the repressive nature of this world. What details really show us that?
Okay, so the world of Pleasantville is built for total static predictability. It's engineered pleasantness. Our sources really break down how even nature is controlled. Think about it. It never rains. The temperature is always exactly 72 degrees Fahrenheit. The forecast is literally sunny and 72 every day. There are no surprises, no anomalies allowed.
That sounds less pleasant and more unnatural, almost creepy.
It is. It goes beyond just nice weather. It's a terrifying lack of, natural complexity or change. And the town's structures, they reinforce this. The fire department, for example, they exist, but they only rescue cats from trees.
Why only cats?
Because fire itself, that symbol of uncontrolled energy, destruction, but also creation, It's literally impossible. It cannot happen in Pleasantville. So firemen don't need to fight fires.
Wow.
And the people, their minds are restricted too. All the roads just circle back into town. There's no concept of geography or life outside Pleasantville. Their universe is completely sealed off. It's a closed loop designed to maintain ignorance as a form of control.
And David figures this out pretty quickly, doesn't he, when he looks for information?
Yeah, he does what any curious person would do. He runs to the library. He's expecting, history books, adventure stories, anything. But every single book on every shelf, completely blank pages. The titles are there, maybe, but inside, nothing. Knowledge, curiosity, history itself, it's all deemed unnecessary in this perfect world. Erased.
And this suppression extends right into their personal lives, too. You mentioned the families.
Right. On the surface, you've got the Parkers, George and Betty. They look like the ideal 1950s family. But there's this key visual detail that speaks volumes about the unspoken rules, especially around sexuality, which was heavily censored in that era's image. George and Betty, the husband and wife, they sleep in separate single twin beds.
The classic sitcom trope.
Exactly. But here it's not just quaint. It visually reinforces this kind of sexless, emotionally regulated environment that the town needs to stay pleasant.
So you have this perfectly controlled static system designed to just maintain itself. But then the arrival of David and Jennifer, particularly Jennifer, that throws a wrench in the works.
A massive wrench. David, remember, knows the script. He's desperately trying to stick to it to not mess things up. But Jennifer, as soon as she steps into the shoes of Mary Sue Parker, she starts breaking every rule.
She's the disruption, basically.
She is. She goes on a date with Skip Martin. He's like the big man on campus, the popular guy. And her plan is basically to introduce him to 1990s dating realities, which means she has sex with him, an act that completely shatters the carefully constructed sexual innocence of the entire show's world. And this single act, that's the inciting incident. The consequences are immediate, they're physical, and they're totally shocking to everyone involved.
So Skip Martin, he's overwhelmed by this.
Yeah.
This new experience he wasn't ready for. And it's not just an emotional change for him, is it?
No, not at all. The physical transformation of the town starts right there with him. He's just overcome by the intensity of it all. And suddenly, there are these literal bursts of color appearing.
Like what?
Maybe a rose he's holding turns vivid red, or the blush on his cheeks becomes truly pink, maybe a piece of clothing. It's sudden, shocking color in this black and white world, and that marks the beginning. It's the first visual sign that experiencing something genuine, something intense, maybe something previously forbidden, it creates a physical, aesthetic shift in Pleasantville itself.
Okay, so that first splash of color, that's the crack in the facade, and it really launches us into the film's main thematic territory. How should we understand this core allegory? What does color really mean here versus the black and white?
Fundamentally, the black and white world represents repression, both societal and personal repression. It embodies conformity, fear of the unknown, and basically just maintaining this comfortable but very limiting status quo. So the emergence of color, that's the release from that repression. It functions as an allegory for, well, for progress, for curiosity, for emotional depth, for accepting complexity.
So moving from grayscale to the full spectrum.
Exactly. Moving from this uniform, predictable, safe existence into a world that's varied, maybe chaotic, certainly diverse. It's about embracing the full range of human experience, the good and the bad.
And I think it's really important to stress, as our analysis suggests, color isn't just about sex, right? Even though that's what kicks it off. It seems broader.
Oh, absolutely crucial point. The film uses that initial act as a catalyst, but it quickly expands the meaning. It shows that any act of genuine self-discovery, any passionate experience, any authentic expression can grant color. It's not just one thing. We really need to look at some of the other key moments of colorization to see the full scope of this transformation.
Okay, like what? What are some early examples?
Well, there's a small but really potent one early on. Margaret, who's David's sort of girlfriend in the show, she's at Lover's Lane.
Right.
And she plucks an apple for David from a tree. And bam, it instantly turns this bright, vivid red.
The forbidden fruit imagery.
Totally intentional. It's storytelling shorthand, right?
Yeah.
That apple immediately makes you think of the biblical forbidden fruit. It symbolizes that first step towards change, towards experimentation, towards desire. It's like the town's metaphorical fall from grace. Or maybe better put, it's the awakening of humanity. It's the first piece of truly natural color in their totally manufactured world.
But maybe the biggest emotional weight early on comes from Betty Parker, the mom, played so well by Jane Allen. Jennifer, kind of accidentally teaches her about things outside her prescribed role.
Yes, Jennifer, despite maybe not having the deepest motives initially, she talks to Betty, this incredibly repressed housewife, about sex, and crucially, about masturbation, about self-pleasure.
And this unlocks something major in Betty.
It leads to this incredibly powerful moment of personal discovery for her. Her repression is so deep-seated that her first truly authentic personal experience results in this almost catastrophic release of, well, natural energy, which the film shows us through the symbol of fire.
And the fire in the tree.
Exactly. Betty has this orgasm in the bathtub, and it doesn't just result in her becoming fully colorized, and she's the first person we see fully transform head to toe, but at the exact same moment, a tree outside spontaneously bursts into uncontrollable flames.
Wow. So the fire is her desire.
It's her desire, her sexual awakening, made physically manifest. And what's key is that when the firemen arrive, they're utterly useless. They don't know how to use a hose because fire, as we said, was only theoretical before. It wasn't real. Betty's awakening literally brings fire into the world.
That's such a visceral way to show that freedom isn't just nice, it's potentially chaotic. Fire is beautiful, but it also burns.
Precisely. The film is saying freedom isn't always pleasant. It can be volatile, dangerous even, but it's real. And we also see color expanding beyond the sexual realm into intellectual and artistic expression through Bill Johnson, the owner of the malt shop.
Right. Bill's trapped in this loop.
Totally. His life is the epitome of black and white conformity. Makes the same burger, the same malt, day in, day out. No variation, no passion. It's an existential rut.
Until David intervenes.
Yeah, David, trying to follow the script but also seeing Bill's quiet despair, shows him something completely alien to Pleasantville. A book of modern art.
Yeah.
You know, abstract expressionism, cubism, highly disruptive nonconformist stuff.
And this sparks something in Bill.
It ignites his imagination. Bill starts painting. He starts pursuing a tentative romance with Betty, who's now this vibrant, colorized woman. And Bill himself becomes colorized the moment he truly expresses himself aesthetically through his painting. It proves that color comes from any genuine act of passion, whether it's sexual, intellectual, or artistic. It's about committing to authentic self-expression, whatever form that takes.
It's also really interesting to track how David and Jennifer themselves change. They start in such opposite places. David the traditionalist, Jennifer the rebel.
And their arcs completely flip, which really underlines the idea that color isn't some fixed goal, but a journey of discovering who you really are.
Yeah.
Jennifer, who initially just wanted to party and, introduce 90s hedonism.
She gets bored with it.
She does. She realizes that endless, shallow pleasure is actually just another kind of trap, another form of repression, maybe. She only becomes colorized later after she unexpectedly discovers a genuine passion for reading, for literature. She gets lost in books and finds real substance there.
And David. He's helping everyone else change, but he stays black and white for a long time. Why? What's he holding back?
That's the key question for his character. David is repressing his own authenticity, maybe his own vulnerability. He's hiding behind his knowledge of the show, trying to control everything, preferring to stay anonymous, safe within the script.
So how does he finally change?
His transformation isn't about knowledge or good deeds. It happens when he finally shows personal courage. He steps off script. He defends Betty, his mom, in this world when she's being harassed by a gang of black and white teenage boys who are scared of her color. He breaks out of his introverted shell, takes an active, risky stand for someone else, and in that moment of authentic action, of vulnerability and courage, that's when he finally turns color. It's not about being perfect or following rules. It's about embracing risk and expressing your true self.
Okay, so as more people embrace these new feelings, curiosity, art, music, real emotion, they become colorized. But the town leaders, the ones who stay determinedly black and white, they don't see this as enlightenment.
Not at all. They view it as a threat, as a disease that's spreading rapidly and undermining the core values, the very foundation of Pleasantville's sanitized existence.
And this is where the film really pivots, right? From focusing on personal change to looking at the larger social and political reaction.
Absolutely. It's a crucial shift. And the director, Gary Ross, was very clear about this. He explicitly said, the movie is about how personal repression gives rise to larger political oppression. It's that mechanism when people fear change or fear parts of themselves, they project that fear outward. They try to control others. And that's how you get social and political ugliness.
The film doesn't shy away from drawing parallels to real-world history here. Our sources point specifically to the American Civil Rights Movement, even though the film uses color purely metaphorically, not racially.
Right. The visual metaphor becomes incredibly powerful in illustrating segregation and prejudice. The black and white residents, the ones clinging to the old ways, start overtly discriminating against the coloreds. We see examples like new rules pop up. No coloreds allowed signs, maybe implicitly at first, then explicitly, banning them from public places like the bowling alley or Bill's Diner after he becomes colored.
It's classic segregation logic, based entirely on fear of difference.
Exactly. Fear of difference, fear of losing control. It directly mirrors Jim Crow laws and the struggles for integration. They're terrified of the vibrant, chaotic influence of these newly awakened people.
And this tension, it eventually explodes into violence, right? There's a riot scene. What sparks that?
It's sparked by art, interestingly enough. Bill Johnson, embracing his newfound colorful self, paints this large, beautiful, colorful nude painting of Betty Parker, an expression of desire, female liberation, new aesthetics.
And he puts it right in the window of his malt shop.
Puts it right on the window, prominently displayed. And this mural becomes the flashpoint. For the colorized people, it's a positive symbol of their new reality. But for the conservative, black and white citizens, it's obscene. It represents moral decay, the breakdown of everything they hold dear.
So the reaction is extreme.
Swift and violent. A riot breaks out. They trash Bill's shop. And perhaps most chillingly, they gather up books, the ones David brought, maybe others that have started to fill with words, and they burn them in the street.
Book burning, that's a universally recognized symbol.
It is. It signifies that this isn't just about being offended by nudity. It's an attack on ideas, on knowledge, on the potential for further change. It's classic authoritarian suppression of intellectual freedom.
And after the riot, the authorities clamp down even harder, led by the mayor, Big Bob.
Played just chillingly by J.T. Walsh. Yeah, the town council, led by Big Bob, formalizes the repression. They establish a new code of conduct.
What does this code involve?
It's designed specifically to reverse the changes. They outlaw reading. They outlaw rock and roll music, which had started to appear. They outlaw the use of colorful paint. They are literally trying to ban the very things that sparked curiosity and self-discovery. It's that classic pattern. Freedom creates uncertainty, and uncertainty often invites authoritarian control.
And the way Big Bob is filmed really emphasizes this shift, doesn't it? From a kind of folksy sitcom mayor to something much more sinister.
Oh, absolutely. The cinematography becomes really deliberate there. Our sources point out how Big Bob is often framed using low angles looking up at him and also canted angles, tilted, Dutch tilts.
Why use those techniques? What effect do they have?
Well, low angles inherently make a subject look powerful, dominant, maybe intimidating. And canted angles, those Dutch tilts, they create unease. They're disorienting, asymmetrical. They suggest instability, something being wrong. Pairing those techniques when filming Big Bob, it visually elevates him, but also makes him seem unbalanced, dangerous. It evokes, as one analysis put it, archival footage of ruthless dictators. It subtly signals the authoritarian threat to the audience.
So the story culminates in a final confrontation, a trial.
Yes. David and Bill are put on trial. They'd protested the code of conduct by painting another huge, colorful mural, this one, depicting all the things the code banned. Love, sex, art, music, literature. A celebration of the new world.
And David uses the trial platform.
He uses it brilliantly, not just to defend their actions, but to force the black and white people in the courtroom, especially the men, to confront their own repressed feelings. He targets George Parker, Betty's husband, pushing him until George finally admits his confusion, his fear, but also his love for his vibrant, changed wife.
And this causes a chain reaction.
It does. George becomes colorized right there. And witnessing that raw, honest emotion unlocks something in others. A wave of color sweeps through the courtroom as people connect with their own hidden feelings. Most of the townspeople turn color.
But not Big Bob. He remains the final holdout.
He's the most resistant, the most invested in the old order. So David realizes he has to provoke an authentic reaction from him, even if that reaction isn't positive.
How does he do that?
He goes right for Big Bob's biggest fear. The loss of the established order, the patriarchal structure. David throws out these hypotheticals. What if things really changed? What if women went to work and men stayed home to cook and clean?
And that does it.
That hits the nerve. The thought of that fundamental shift in roles, that loss of status, it enrages Big Bob. He loses control, starts yelling.
And he turns color. But not through joy or love.
No, through pure, unadulterated rage and fear. That's the film's really nuanced point. When Big Bob finally lets his true feelings surface, even though they're destructive anger and deep-seated fear, he turns colorful. But it's described as kind of blotchy, uneven. It's not a pleasant transformation. And he immediately flees, ashamed. It underscores that point. Repression always hides some kind of authentic emotion, even if it's ugly. Color just represents the truth of the self, whatever that truth may be.
Okay, so understanding the depth of the allegory is one thing, but we absolutely have to talk about how they made this film look the way it does. That visual contrast between black and white and color is everything, and achieving that in 1998, it required some seriously groundbreaking technical work.
Oh, definitely. This film is actually a huge landmark in the history of visual effects for cinema. Pleasantville basically pioneered a technique that's now completely standard, the digital intermediate process, or DI. More specifically, it holds the distinction of being the very first new feature film, shot on film, where they digitally scanned the footage specifically to selectively remove or manipulate colors on a shot-by-shot, sometimes frame-by-frame basis.
So for anyone listening who might just think, oh, they put a filter on it, explain why this was such a massive deal back in 1997 when they were making it.
Right. It was way beyond a simple filter. It was an enormous undertaking, especially given how relatively basic visual effects pipelines were compared to today. First off, they shot the entire movie on color film stock during principal photography, which ran from about March to July 1997. Then, to get that seamless transition, they had to bring all that footage into the digital world at a really high quality.
Which needed some serious computing power for the time.
Huge amounts. Around 163,000 frames of 35mm film were scanned at 2K resolution. Cinesite, the visual effects house in LA, handled this. And it wasn't automated. Each frame or sequence of frames had to be treated digitally. They used complex techniques like rotoscoping, which means painstakingly tracing around objects or people frame by frame and color keying.
So they could isolate just the bits that needed to stay colored, like an apple or someone's face.
Exactly. Isolate the apple, isolate the blush on a cheek, while digitally draining the color out of everything else, turning it into that crisp, high-contrast black and white. The sheer amount of manual labor involved for 163,000 frames, it was astronomical, a massive financial risk, and a huge technical challenge.
And the success of the whole visual idea really depends on how well they did that, making those bursts of color feel sudden, real, visceral.
Absolutely. That commitment to digital manipulation is why the contrast still feels so powerful today. It works thematically because the filmmakers needed absolute control over which specific pixels were repressed and which were awakened. That level of artistic control using digital tools on a feature film, that was cutting-edge stuff back then. They were effectively inventing the artistic use of DI to tell an allegorical story.
But looking at the production notes, we also have to touch on something much more sobering. While the film was a technical achievement, the process of making it was tied to a real tragedy in the industry, something that highlights ongoing issues about working hours.
Yes, that's a really important and somber part of the film's history that needs acknowledging. During that intense principal photography schedule, a camera operator named Brent Hirschman tragically died.
What happened?
He fell asleep while driving home from the set after working an incredibly long day. Sources say it was a 19-hour workday. The extreme hours demanded by the production schedule were seen as a direct contributing factor.
And this wasn't just overlooked, right? There were consequences.
No, it led to a wrongful death lawsuit filed against New Line Cinema and the production companies. The suit argued they were responsible for creating dangerous working conditions by imposing such excessive hours on the crew.
Was there any move for industry change after that?
There was. In response to Brent Hirschman's death, fellow crew members rallied. They launched a petition for something they called Brent's Rule, which aimed to mandate a maximum 14-hour workday in the industry to protect crew safety. Unfortunately, the petition didn't succeed in getting legislation passed at the time, but the incident really cemented Brent Hirschman's story as a key moment in the ongoing fight for safer labor practices in Hollywood. The film itself carries dedications to him and also to director Gary Ross's mother and to J.T. Walsh, who sadly passed away before the film even came out.
It's a heavy reminder of the human cost that can sometimes lie behind filmmaking. Shifting back to the film's legacy, though, Despite that initial box office struggle, critics like Roger Ebert were right on the money, calling it one of the best and most original films of the year. It seems to have really lasted.
Its influence has definitely endured. It kind of set a blueprint for these cinematic allegories about conformity versus chaotic change. You see echoes of it. For example, filmmaker John M. Chu explicitly mentioned Pleasantville, along with The Truman Show, as a key thematic touchstone for his upcoming film adaptation of the musical Wicked. He talked about using its ideas of rebellion and an awakening of a generation to portray the Land of Oz. That core concept, visually showing societal transformation through radical aesthetic shifts, owes a huge debt to what Gary Ross achieved here.
Okay, now let's get into something that really feels like a deep dive. We've talked about color representing enlightenment, but I, like probably many people, always just assumed the town was literally physically black and white to begin with. Yet our research turned up this really fascinating detailed fan theory, or maybe it's more of a close reading, that completely reframes the film's message. Tell us about this dull color idea.
Yeah, this interpretation, I think, adds a lot of weight to the film's ultimate meaning. It suggests that repression isn't about a total absence, but about suppression. The theory goes like this. Pleasantville was never truly black and white. Instead, it existed in extremely dull, muted, low-saturation colors. The people living there were just so accustomed to this drabness, this lack of vibrancy, that they perceived it as their normal reality. So the colorization wasn't the introduction of color itself, the introduction of vibrancy, saturation, intensity, true emotional depth visually represented.
Okay, that's a cool idea. But is there actual evidence in the film, like in the dialogue, to back that up? Does it suggest they knew colors existed, just not vividly?
There are definitely lines you can point to. You have to listen really closely to how people react to the new colors. For instance, when that young girl's tongue turns red after licking a newly colored ice cream cone, her mother describes it to someone else saying it's really red.
Ah, the emphasis.
Exactly. If the concept of red was entirely new, she'd probably just say it's red. Calling it really red implies a comparison. It suggests she knows a version of red, maybe a dull, washed-out version, and this red is an extreme, intense departure from that norm. The same logic kind of applies when someone later refers to the grass as really green. It suggests they knew green, but not this green.
It's like the difference between seeing only shades of gray versus seeing the full saturated spectrum. And isn't there a moment during the climax, the trial scene, that strongly supports this?
Yes, absolutely. It's a key moment. During that confrontation in the courtroom, one of the black and white men gets flustered and exclaims something about his door being blue now, and another man immediately defensively shouts back, "My door has always been blue."
Right. If his door had been literally grayscale, how would he know its true color was blue?
Precisely. Unless, as the theory suggests, the door was always a very, very dull, repressed shade of blue that he just accepted as normal, as part of the town's overall grayness. His outburst suggests he recognized the underlying color once it became vibrant.
Wow, that really changes the interpretation. The implication is pretty powerful. It means the black and white world we see might actually be the subjective perception of David and Jennifer, the outsiders, who are used to a world full of saturation and emotional complexity. So the pleasantness of the town wasn't a complete void of feeling or color. It was just profoundly repressed. Boring, lacking the vibrancy that comes with real emotion and self-discovery.
And that reading fits perfectly with the film's anti-nostalgia message. One analysis we looked at by Robert Buca called Pleasantville a morality tale pitting contemporary American values against these idealized yet also dystopian visions of the 1950s.
And Jesse Walker's point about contrasting the fake TV 1950s with the real 1950s feels relevant here too.
Exactly. Walker argued the film cleverly contrasts that sanitized, controlled TV version of the 50s with the actual social changes that were bubbling under the surface back then, the beginnings of the civil rights movement, modern art gaining traction, changing sexual mores. The film almost suggests that the color, the change, was bound to happen eventually anyway. David and Jennifer were just the catalyst that sped it up. The dullness couldn't last forever.
So ultimately, what's the core message the film leaves us with? It seems to be about embracing authenticity over trying to fit a perfect mold.
I think that's exactly it. Look at when David returns to the real world at the end. He finds his own mother in the 90s lamenting how her life hasn't turned out perfectly, how it didn't follow the script she expected. And David, having learned what he learned in Pleasantville, reassures her, essentially saying that nothing has to be perfect. Life isn't supposed to follow a neat script. Rob McDaniel summed it up beautifully, saying David's journey teaches him only that there is no right life, no model for how things are supposed to be.
It's permission to be messy, to be real.
To embrace the chaos, the color, the complexity of actual reality, not some idealized fantasy.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listeners. It comes from the critic Roger Ebert, reflecting on the film. He observed, quite sharply, that nothing creates fascists quite like the threat of freedom. If Pleasantville shows us a world terrified of color, terrified of the messiness and unpredictability that comes with real feeling and change, maybe we should ask ourselves, are we, even in our seemingly modern, colorful world, still keeping parts of our own lives, maybe our politics, our emotions, our willingness to engage with difficult ideas, locked away in a kind of dull, self-imposed gray? Are we still afraid of the potential chaos and vibrancy that true freedom, true authenticity might bring? Something to think about.
We really hope you enjoyed this detailed deep dive into the source material, the ideas behind Pleasantville.
Please do subscribe, like, and maybe leave us a comment. Let us know what film concept or idea you'd like us to unpack next time.
Thank you for listening to VSO W.